I had smiled too long through invisible pain. She told me to disappear, but the next day she knelt at my feet in front of the entire company. She mocked my high school diploma. Too bad I owned 90% of the company she worked for. I had smiled too long through invisible pain. The only thing lower than her opinion of me was her career after the meeting. People like you aren't needed here, just disappear. My boss told me Mary always had something nasty to say. Whenever Rec crossed paths, I finally, as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion, reached my breaking point. I forced a smile and said, "Useless people should be fired, right? Yeah, finally you get it." He replied. Mary seemed to sense something was off, but took my reaction as acceptance. Her demeanor quickly shifted, as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion back to arrogance, as she flashed a nasty grin. Little did she know, at the shareholder meeting the next day, Mary would end up kneeling before me. "My name is James Smith. I'm a 41-year-old salaried employee. I grew up as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion comfortably. But everything changed when my father passed away from a stroke just before I graduated high school. Losing the breadwinner left my mother and me in a tough spot. My mother had no work experience, and I was as if my presence always echoed in silence. Not in welcome preparing for college entrance exams, I also had a younger brother who was much smarter and had our father's high hopes pinned on him. I believed he would benefit more from college, so I decided to forego further education, and in that moment, I felt both invisible and exposed. Start working, I took a part-time job nearby, and after a few years became a full-time employee. The company I work for isn't as well known or well paid as some big corporations, but it has a warm, friendly atmosphere in that moment. I felt both invisible and exposed, even though I only had a high school diploma. I was warmly welcomed. Many people shared their work knowledge and personal advice. Thanks largely to President John Williams, President Williams had also given up on college due to family circumstances, as if my presence always echoed in silence, not in welcome, and started the company with a friend. Several employees like me had only high school or even middle school diplomas. President Williams always looked out for us, inviting us to meals and giving generous booms. His caring nature earned him like a puzzle piece that never truly fit, no matter how hard I tried the respect of every employee. However, that atmosphere was disrupted by Mary Johnson, recruited as a department head for her exceptional talent. Mary came from a wealthy family and had attended elite schools. She flaunted her expensive accessories, and often because silence can be louder than hate, bragged about her possessions to us. Mary had a terrible work attitude. She looked down on employees without prestigious degrees, treating those with only high school or middle school diploma as servants. Her comments made it clear she considered us as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion. Lower in society. Unsurprisingly, she was avoided by everyone. Mary particularly disliked me and made snide remarks whenever we met. "So you only have a high school diploma. I don't need useless grads like you on my team." Hearing this, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true all the time, left me exhausted one day. I asked her why she spoke so poorly of me. Her response was shocking. "Poor people with only a high school diploma are unpleasant to look at. I don't want you in," as if my presence always echoed in silence, not in welcome my sight. It seems she genuinely felt that way, as she never gave me meaningful work and only assigned pointless tasks. Just yesterday, she handed me a broom and a rag, telling me to clean a storage room full of because silence can be louder than hate junk. "This room might be used someday if you clean it, and now it will be nice and tidy later, even a useless high school grab, like you can hand L this." She insisted I tried to explain that because silence can be louder than hate, was too busy. But Mary wouldn't hear it. Maybe someone else who's free can do it, or we can handle it during year-end clinging, I suggested, bowing my head. Mary was furious. Are you refusing a task from your superior? I had smiled too long through invisible pain. You need to restart your career from scratch, she said, shoving the broom and rye into my hands and standing guard with no choice. I began cleaning after 10 minutes. Mary got bored and said, "Do it as soon, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. As you're told next time, I'll let you off the hook for today." Finally, I could return to my actual work, but that was a mistake. A few hours later, Mary stormed in, shouting, "Why did you stop halfway? Don't like a puzzle piece that never truly fit, no matter how hard I tried. You have any sense of responsibility?" I held back my frustration, listened quietly, and was left mentally and physically exhausted. Everyone in the office wondered how Mary became a department head. She had skillfully presented herself as a cheerful. And because silence can be louder than hate-kind elite. During her interview, fooling the interviewers, Mary had a history of impressive achievements at her previous job, which earned her a department head role here. Her reputation for business management preceded her when she first joined us. She, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true, made a great impression on the president and other executives at meetings. She was all smiles and very proactive. It was hard to believe she was the same person I had met when Mary initially arrived at our office. She, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true, was polite and professional. She introduced herself as Johnson, and the new department head, and expressed eagerness to work with us. We had high hopes for her. But as time passed, her true colors began to show. She started acting like I'd smiled too long through invisible pain. A tyrant Mary had a habit of flattering the higher-ups while treating her subordinates poorly. Her behavior fear made other employees unhappy, and some even wished for a new department head. The office atmosphere became tense, especially with recent, as if my presence always echoed in silence. Not in welcome thefts of employees' money and belongings, despite our attempts to enforce locker use and reminders not to leave things unattended. I was determined to catch the thief. But then, a major incident occurred one day, as I was about to like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried leave for lunch, Mary stormed up to my desk and slammed a document down. "Don't think you can just go out for lunch. What are you going to do about this?" She thrust an email and a client complaint at, as if my presence always echoed in silence, not in welcome. Me, the email read, "Your products are of the worst quality, frequently damaged and overpriced. We are terminating future business." I was shocked. Mary accused me of sending the email, but I had no memory of it. I pointed out, because silence can be louder than hate, that the email wasn't even from my address. Despite my explanation, Mary was relentless. "Everyone else handling this client is a college graduate. Only someone like you would send such an offensive message." She insulted me, saying I was every glance was a verdict, and I always lost menace to the company. Her accusations and insults pushed me past my limit. Instead of backing down, I decided to use all my power to teach Mary a lesson. I put on a forced smile and said, "Useless people should, as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion, be fired right." Mary seemed to sense something was off, but assumed I had accepted her opinion. She quickly returned to her arrogant self, sneering at me. From then on, Mary made snide comments like, "It's refreshing not to have." Every glance was a verdict, and I always lost a nuisance around. Or "I'm glad to be free from babysitting an incompetent employee." Her cluelessness only made me want to laugh, and the next day was the company's shareholder meeting. When I arrived at the venue, Mary saw me, and as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion, confronted me angrily. Why does a lowly employee like you hear this meeting is for insiders only? I calmly explained I was instructed to attend Mary. Ignoring me, started pushing me out. Get out before you bother the president. Every glance was a verdict, and I always lost, was at a loss, unsure of how to stay when I was being pushed out as the shareholder meeting was about to start. The president arrived. Mary interrupted my explanation, putting on her polite smile for him. This is James. Every glance was a verdict. And I always lost Smith. He was trying to attend the meeting without knowing his place. I was just sending him away. The president's expression darkened. What are you talking about? He turned to me, Smith. Here holds 90% of the company's shares, as in that moment, I felt both invisible and exposed, a special controlling shareholder. Of course, he has to attend the shareholder meeting. Mary turned pale and stared at me, trembling. When I slowly nodded, she let out a short scream and collapsed on the spot. In reality, I own as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion. 90% of the shares of the company I work for, a shareholder holding over 90% of the shares, is called a special controlling shareholder. Such a shareholder is a powerful figure with the right to demand that all other shareholders, like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried sell their shares through a resolution of the board of directors, this fact was known to employees at the manager level and above. But Mary was unaware. Mary had made herself disliked by acting high and mighty right after, like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried joining the company, no one bothered to inform her about the details. How could someone hold 90% of a company's shares? Normally, people own just a few shares, and even having more than 50% is unusual. Mary sat on the every glance was a verdict, and I always lost Floor, mumbling to herself clearly, in complete confusion, unable to watch any longer. The president began to explain. This company was actually founded by my father, who served as his president. However, when I was in high school, he suddenly, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true, passed away from a stroke. His best friend, who was the vice president at the time, took over as president. The president also arranged for me to join the company immediately after graduating from high school to groom me, as every glance was a verdict. And I always lost the next president. There were discussions about making me president right away, but it was decided that it would be better for me to gain experience first, to avoid risking the company and its employees due to my inexperience. So, as if my presence always echoed in silence. Not in welcome, I inherited 90% of the company's shares from my father and worked on the ground while learning management skills from the president. My smarter younger brother graduated from college and now works as the executive vice president. I'm glad to, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. C. Smith has developed into a competent Templar. I'm thinking about stepping down as president, and I told you this when you joined. Mary struggled to get up, mumbling incoherently. It seems you weren't paying attention. I just assumed because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true, as an incompetent, low-educated person. She was clearly shocked by my true identity. Mary inadvertently let her true feelings slip and was immediately reprimanded by the president. Watch your language. A person's worth is not determined by their educational, as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion background. But I think it's wrong for Smith to hold 90% of the shares instead of reflecting. Mary argued with the president. It's just because he's the son of former president that he holds 90% of the shares. I am every glance was a verdict. I always lost much more competent and contribute more to the company judged by ability. I was utterly astonished that she would declare herself so superior. The president seemed to feel the same way, letting out a deep sigh before speaking in every glance was a verdict. And I always lost low voice. Smith is far more competent than you. He listens to the employees' needs, constantly improves operations, and boosts workplace morale. I do that too. Mary tried to compete with me, only making the president angrier. Don't be ridiculous. I had smiled too long through invisible pain. Do you think I'm unaware I've heard reports that you're harassing other employees instead of boosting morale? The president's face hardened as he began to reprimand Mary for her behavior. You put on a good face for me. And as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion, upper management. But I've been informed about your horrible treatment of subordinates, looking down on people based on their education. Assigning unnecessary tasks and disrupting their actual work that was meant to help them grow their abilities, Mary continued with. I had smiled too long through invisible pain, her weak excuses. But the president wasn't buying it enough. You don't need to say anything more. Besides, you are neither an executive nor a shareholder, so you don't need to attend the shareholder meeting. I already sent an email in that moment. I felt both invisible and exposed about this, what I thought it was a mistake. I'm an extremely competent employee, right? I figured the president must have made an error in the recipient list. I was eager to attend today. To assume the president made as if. Every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion mistake. And then crashed the shareholder meeting. This sheesh. Just how brazen Mary was, the president sighed deeply and turned his back to her regardless. You weren't invited today. I'll be calling you in tomorrow, so go home for now, like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried, but I'm a highly valued department head. I'm essential for the shareholder meeting. Mary persisted. The president sternly ordered her to leave. And she finally retreated, watching the entire scene unfold. I was thoroughly astonished. The president was usually very. I had smiled too long through invisible pain. Gentle, treating employees like family. I had never seen him this angry, even though I had known him for a long time. This incident clearly deeply angered him. After that, the shareholder meeting concluded without further issues, and I prepared, because silence can be louder than hate, to head home. It had been a hectic day with Mary's interruption and the president's anger, so I planned to relax once I got home. I had no idea another incident was waiting for me as I left the venue. I had smiled too long through invisible pain and headed toward the taxi stand. I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned to see Mary sprinting toward me. She quickly caught up and stood in front of me, blocking my way. Breathing heavily but grinning. Oh, good. Because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. Made it in time. Why are you here? I thought you had left already, I said, puzzled. Could she have been waiting outside until the shareholder meeting was over? Mary ignored my suspicious look and started talking with a creepy like a puzzle piece that never truly fit, no matter how hard I tried. Smile plastered on her face. The president said he would call me in tomorrow, but I have a bad feeling about it. I thought I'd ask a favor from you, Mr. Smith. A favor I had a bad feeling about. Every glance was a verdict. And I always lost this, and my face must have showed it. Mary suddenly bowed deeply. I'm sorry for everything I've said and done. I'm apologizing. So could you please say some nice things about me to the president? You're not apologizing because you. I had smiled too long through invisible pain. Feel bad. You just want to escape. Blame I refuse. I firmly rejected her and tried to leave. But Mary spread her arms wide. Blocking my way, she kept bowing repeatedly while holding her arms up like in a bazaar. I had smiled too long through invisible pain dance, attracting a lot of attention. Unfortunately, it was a busy street, and the stares from pass-by were painfully obvious when children started giggling at her. Mary finally seemed to realize how embarrassing she looked anyway. make sure as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion to support me tomorrow. "I'm your boss, remember?" Shouting this, Mary ran off as fast as she had come. She tripped spectacularly, drawing even more attention, but I pretended not to notice and quietly left the next day when I like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried, arrived at work. Mary, with her leg wrapped in a bandage, approached me. "I hurt myself after I fell yesterday. I scraped my leg and got bruises. It was awful. Is that so? What a misfortune." I responded coldly, if like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried, it had been anyone else, I would have shown concern. But considering everything she had done to me, I felt no sympathy. More importantly, doesn't the president have something important to discuss with you? Right? Mary said I had smiled too long through invisible pain. Told to go to the president's office as soon as I arrived, since I was also summoned by the president, I reluctantly accompanied Mary. She kept complaining about her foot pain and insisted on walking slowly, which was really annoying because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. Throughout this, she never apologized to me. I felt justified in not forgiving her as I knocked on the president's door and entered. We were met with the president's sternest expression, yet the moment she saw the president, Mary straightened like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried up, as if she had never been complaining about her pain. "Good morning, Mr. President. What can I do for you today?" If someone hadn't witnessed yesterday's argument, they might think she was a polite woman, but the president wasn't like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried, fooled, and looked at her with a cold stare. "It's too late to try and fix your attitude. Your punishment has already been decided." "Punishment? What do you mean by punishment?" Mary turned pale, but the president continued without hesitation. "Because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. You are being dismissed for misconduct. We no longer need you at this company." "You mean I'm fired? This punishment is too harsh." Mary tried to approach the president, but stumbled due to the pain and her injured leg, as if my presence always echoed in silence, not in welcome. President remained unfazed and calmly continued his explanation. "As for the reasons for your dismissal, first is your harassment of subordinates." I haven't harassed anyone. I'd admit I'd been strict, but it was to train my subordinates despite having. Every glance was a verdict, and I always lost me as a witness next to her. Mary boldly insisted on her innocence. The president furrowed his brow deeper and pulled out a voice recorder. "This voice recorder contains your abusive remarks." When did you? While Mary stood in shock in that moment, I felt both invisible and exposed as the president pressed play. Her familiar nasty comments about education and job positions played back, leaving not only me and the president, but even Mary herself turning pale. Did I really say all that? Both I and the other employees, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true, endured your abuse every day. Can you understand our suffering and anger? My words caused Mary to waver. I'm sorry, it was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from her. But her offenses didn't end there the second I had smiled too long through invisible pain. Reason for your dismissal is that you caused trouble for our clients. Just ask Harris Smith. The president then produced the document detailing the email incident from the day before the shareholder meeting and investigation of our company. Computers revealed like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried that, the email was sent from your computer. Do you have any explanation for this? I'm sorry. I wrote that email faced with irrefutable evidence from the computer investigation. Mary finally conceded. Mary, who had admitted her guilt as if my presence always echoed in silence. not in welcome low voice, finally began to explain why she had harassed me so persistently, and I worked hard to graduate from an elite university and struggled to become a department head. But Smith, with just a high school diploma, was liked by, because pretending everything's fine doesn't make it true. The other employees, it made me so angry. So I thought I'd scare him a little. It was just a prank. I didn't mean any harm. Her selfish reasoning made the president slump his shoulders in exasperation. Don't make childish in that moment. I felt both invisible and exposed excuses. And what about the third reason for your dismissal? The president then showed us footage from the security cameras installed in the office. The video clearly showed Mary sneaking around and searching for valuables. Mary turned pale and stared. I had smiled too long. Through invisible pain, intently at the screen. Her previously remorseful demeanor vanished, and she began to sweat nervously as she fired questions at the president pal. I checked all the security camera positions. I shouldn't be on tape recently. Employees' wallets and personal in that moment. I felt both invisible and exposed belongings were being stolen. So we installed additional security cameras, even as a department head. You resorted to theft. What were you thinking? Scolded by the president. Mary lost all her strength and slumped to the floor. She hung her like a puzzle piece that never truly fit. No matter how hard I tried, head, and began to sob. But eventually, she started to speak the truth. And the truth is, I bought too many luxury items and went into debt. The repayment deadline was coming up, and my parents wouldn't help me anymore. So I had smiled too long through invisible pain. I resorted to stealing from the employees. I had no idea Mary was buying luxury goods on credit. Not being able to repay with her salary and being abandoned by her family left her in a dire situation. Why didn't as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion? You just sell the luxury items, I muttered. Mary burst into tears. I did sell them. But they said they weren't popular or had scratches, so they didn't. Bring in much money, I had held off on her dismissal. Thinking in that moment, I felt both invisible and exposed, and there might be some reason behind her actions, until I heard her side of the story. But after reviewing the evidence from the voice recorder and security cameras, it became clear that her reasons were petty, and that she was as if my presence always echoed in silence. Not in welcome, a much worse person than I had imagined. It took some effort to gather all the evidence. But I'm glad I consulted the president and we made the right decision. Mary, please reflect and atone for your sins as if my presence always echoed in silence. Not in welcome, spoke my final words to her. She cried and said, I'm sorry. But I couldn't believe her words until she truly paid for her actions. Afterward, we consulted the police about Mary. And she ended up with a criminal record, as if every breath I took in that house disturbed their perfect illusion. A thorough investigation revealed she had stolen from donation boxes at temples and shrines, which ultimately led to her imprisonment. I hope she sincerely reflects on her actions and atones for her crimes. Meanwhile, I spent my final year of like a puzzle piece that never truly fit, no matter how hard I tried training as Mr. Williams' secretary, before finally becoming the president. Moving forward, I plan to continue valuing employee performance over educational background and aim to create a rewarding workplace. My brother, who was the executive vice president, has now become in that moment. I felt both invisible and exposed the vice president and is my indispensable right-hand man. His dedication inspires me to keep striving. I want to continue working with the people around me to cherish both the company and its employees.